sits inside the rain chamber.
Just a little water dish.
Mm-hmm. So what happens is we put the animals in, we sit on these hammocks. My husband will be having 3 snakes crawling around them, slithering all over them. And I'll be taking the ones out, putting them back in, and he'll put another one in. And what we're doing is they're all potty trained. And as soon as we always put them in the rain chamber the day they're going to eat. But like last night, I put them in the rain chamber last night, and they're not going to eat till we finish today.
Okay.
So I usually put them in the rain chamber. We handle them all over the room, let them do stuff, and then we put them all back in and turn the lights off, and then come back in like 10 minutes, and they are all smashed against the glass waiting to get their dinner.
Welcome back to the Animals at Home podcast. My name is Dillon Perrin, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Today, I'm speaking with Amy Benzie, who is a keeper of emerald tree boas, specifically the Amazon Basin emerald tree boas. That's Corallus batisi. Amy has a absolutely fascinating story. Many of you may follow her on Instagram. That's where I first found her. If you find her on Instagram, if you follow her account, which I really encourage you to do that after listening to this episode, you will think you're looking at someone who's been keeping snakes for her whole life. And now she has had snakes early on in her life, but just recently she got back into snakes. And when you see her reptile room or her snake room, it is unbelievable. There's all these free range jungle gym areas. There's a rain chamber for her snakes, and it's just really fascinating. But she has an incredible story about this vision that she had that brought her back to snakes. And she had this vision that drew her to want to get snakes, but not only that, also to go to the jungle, and a place that she had never been before. And she's now since been many times, 5 or 6 times, to the rainforest to specifically look for Amazon Basin emerald tree boas. And it is just a remarkable story. So we talk about her draw to these snakes, how she cares for them, how she allows them to free range around this room. And so we learned some care aspects about them, but we also learned the trips to Central America or South America and the amazing information that she's pulled from those environments, and why she felt so drawn to learn. And it's pretty amazing. You take somebody who's just got back into snakes, and then within a year, they've gone to the native location many times to do their own research. So you can imagine there's a powerful experience behind that, and it's really a wonderful story. Now, if you're listening to this on the audio-only platform, Amy does walk us around her room, and I think you'll still be able to follow along with the audio-only, but you may want to come back to the YouTube version at some point just so you can watch, or just go check out her Instagram page so you can see what she's up to and what she's talking about. But for most of the conversation, it's just a conversation between the two of us, so you shouldn't lack too much, but she does show us the snakes from time to time, so you might feel left out. So please come back to the YouTube page if you feel like you're missing out on something visual. Before we jump into the episode, make sure you head to animalsathomenetwork.com if you're looking for more information on this episode. You can find all the show notes there. Thank you so much to customreptilehabitats.com for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. There are affiliate links in both the YouTube description as well as the show notes. And if you are interested in joining us on Patreon and joining the Discord server, or just having early access, ad-free access to the episodes, you can do that for as little as $3 per month over at patreon.com/animalsathome. Otherwise, sharing the content on Facebook or Instagram is another great way to help grow the show. Let's jump into this episode. I know you will enjoy it, and I will see you afterwards. All right. Well, Amy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk with you. You're someone that's just sort of exploded on the scene as far as my Instagram page is concerned, because I don't even know if I was aware of your page maybe a year ago. I think you probably only made it within a year, and suddenly you're sitting in this incredible snake room with all this stuff hanging from the walls. For people that are just listening, Amy is sitting in this room surrounded by enclosures. There's vines hanging from the ceiling. The entire thing looks like a jungle, and we're going to talk all about it. I cannot wait, because you're someone that's just become obsessed with one species, and you've done this incredible job with it. So why don't we just start with telling us about the room that you're sitting in. Eventually we'll get it to the species that you keep and all that, but I just need to hear about this room.
Awesome. Well, we call this our jungle room, and we have 6 emeralds in this room and then 1 in quarantine in the other room. So we started with 1, but as many people who collect snakes, especially, I think, know, 1's never enough, and too many's Never, there's no such thing as too many. One's not enough and too many's, what am I trying to say? One's too many and too many's not enough.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So now you have this. So when you first got the first snake, I assume this room did not exist. So did you just have one enclosure? Like, tell me how it expand. I think everybody's familiar with how you can expand from 1 to 6 snakes, but how do you expand from this into this room that we're sitting in?
We started off with the one little snake, a little red neonate, upstairs in an aquarium filled with plants and vines and water bowls. And she just had such a good time weaving in and out of everything. So we ordered her a bigger enclosure long before she was due for one. And we got one of those 4 foot by 2 by 2 Zen enclosures and just filled it with vines. That's how we created this system. And it's just a big stick and it sets right in the enclosure. So even when she was just a little baby, she had all of this to climb on. And then it just, I guess like it is when you buy your cat or your dog a toy and they really like it, you end up with 20 toys laying around the living room. And that's pretty much what happened here. The more she showed appreciation for stuff, the more we started doing. And I have all of these vines here because I'm sure we'll talk about later. I've been traveling to the Amazon rainforest, researching how these animals live in the wild and then coming home and trying to reproduce it. So between her wanting the exercise and me just wanting to know more about the animals I was keeping, I was inspired to try to recreate the jungle in here. And so we went down to the river, cut down a lot of vines that were right in the traffic where the road guys come and cut stuff down. So they were going to be cut down anyway. And we bleached them, dried them, shellacked them, and they're fastened to the ceiling where the beams are with big screws. So they're very strong. And then the interesting thing is, which I'm going to show you guys right now, is I use these vines that I've created, and they are made out of soaker hose and copper wire. So I use a 1/4 inch and a 1 inch diameter soaker hose and fill them with 10 gauge and 6 gauge copper wire, which make them extremely flexible, but still nice and firm. And these vines, anybody can make them, and you just can bundle them up and throw them right into an enclosure. You don't need places to hang, dowels, super easy. So what I use these for is also decorated inside of the enclosures, which we can look at, but I want to get started with this. I connect these are my removable vines.
Now I see that they're green. Did you paint those or did that soaker hose come green like that?
No, I painted this with Ecos paint, which is anybody who's built enclosures and painted probably knows Ecos paint is completely reptile safe. They claim you can paint it with the reptile right in there.
Really?
So
is it a spray paint or?
No, it's brush on paint. Just comes either in a quart or a gallon.
Gotcha.
I have ordered a gallon of green and then a quart of brown, yellow, white. So I do make a lot of these vines because I use them. Of course, every time I get some, I want more.
Right.
But and these animals also, they come out at night. This entire room is filled with cameras. And the animals come out at nighttime on their own. I just hook up these vines, and when the lights go out, they get right on them. And you can see a lot of videos on my social media pages showing these animals slithering all around this room at night.
So basically you take this soaker hose vine and they're essentially like a bridge coming from the open enclosure into the main area, which is this basically jungle gym. So is this kind of like somewhat of a nightly routine for you? You connect the main enclosures to the jungle gym?
Not really a routine, but something I do let them do.
Okay. Now, I guess this room is completely snake proof for the most part?
Yes. There are some, like the water distiller, I just take all that stuff and put it on the floor.
Okay. On
the nights I let them out. And when I let them out, I have to be prepared to stay up late because I monitor them and video them and stuff. So right now I'm getting Isis here. She's sleeping, but their lights are going to go out here very soon. You won't see them go out, but they're about to wake up. So can you guys see her at all? Should I use the other camera?
Yeah, maybe bring the other camera in a little closer.
Can you see her at all? I can't see what the camera sees.
I can't see her because she's so well camouflaged, but I'm sure as she starts to come out onto those vines, because I can see the vines pretty easily, that we'll start to see. Oh yeah, there's her face. Yeah.
Yep, there she is.
Yeah. Hello, Isis.
So yeah, she'll come out. And then I'm also going to let Zaltis out because these two animals, well, I actually have 3 animals who will always come out. Zaltis, Isis, and Azamah.
And now when you say that you prepare to stay up late when they're out, is it because will you not let them out just throughout the night and then wake up in the morning and put them back? Or do you always make sure that you're there if you know, to throw them back in their enclosures when?
They usually go back because they're very habitual and they like to sleep in the same spot. So usually by the end of the night, they're back in their enclosures. Zaltis, my boy who comes out a lot, he will go either in Isis's enclosure or his enclosure. So, but Isis always goes home. I did find her one time. Well, she figured out how to open her door. And that's the crazy thing about them is once they figure something out, they just keep doing it over and over again.
Right.
They're super smart. But she started opening this door. So now I have to wire it shut because it's all a glass enclosure and I don't know how to put a different mechanism on it right now. But if I keep the keys in and put a thing between them, she can't turn the knob up here.
Right.
And Zaltis, this is the 3rd locking mechanism we've had on his door. So
that's amazing.
Once in a while, they'll be out and you didn't let them out. Maybe just 3 times ever.
Well, and so as you're setting up that second vine structure too, I think as far as I know, if we were to rewind the clock back only a couple of years ago, you had no snakes, right? This is something that you've just
correct.
Recently. So maybe you could talk about did you keep snakes in the past? I forget. I'm not sure.
Yes, I was a little girl in Tucson, Arizona, and it was very cool for a little girl to like snakes. So there was a snake available in the apartment complex where I lived, and all of the kids wanted it, but I was the only one who could get it. Can you guys see her?
Oh yeah, we can see her. Yeah. Beautiful. For those listening, we're just watching this emerald tree boa climb out of her enclosure and go into the greater jungle gym. It's pretty amazing.
Isn't she beautiful? And you know, the funny thing is, I'll keep going about, did I have snakes? So yes, I had one snake and then I got more snakes over the years. And then I just kept collecting them. And then I had a kid in my early 20s and she turned out to really like them. So then she got snakes. And then I guess at about 27 or so, I didn't have snakes anymore. And I never had one again until just a little over 2 years ago when we started with these guys.
That's amazing. And what drew you to this species specifically?
It was not. I never saw this species. I didn't even know it existed. But when I decided I wanted a snake, my husband didn't like my first choice. So he started Googling.
What was the first choice?
My first choice was the false water cobra.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I wanted that animal was because I saw so many videos of how friendly it was, and you could like put a plate of fish and shrimp and all kinds of stuff, and it would just eat them. And I was just really enthralled with the friendliness of them. And then, like I said, my husband had never touched a snake in his life, so he was willing to do this, but he wanted to choose the species. And as he started researching these, he learned about their gentle temperament, their beautiful looks, And his comment about the first choice I had of snakes was, that's a face only a mother could love. But he says now that he knows more about snakes, he sees more of the cobra look in it, and he does think they're beautiful. But we're into these now, and there's no other snake that will ever come into our lives, I don't think.
And was there a reason that you gravitated towards the Amazon Basin is it a subspecies? It's a subspecies. No, it's a separate species.
Yes, they're separate species.
Oh, separate. Okay.
It was, if I remember correctly, in the 1970s is when they separated them as a caninus and a batisi. The caninus or caninus, depending on where you're pronouncing it, is the northern version, and we went with these guys because just on the internet and stuff, you read about the caninus has a really bad temperament. They're known to snap, and the batisi are known to be extremely gentle. Mm. So I was going to get a pair of the caninus because I could afford the caninus because it's a significant price difference. And I just really wanted to, and they were so beautiful. And I just thought their reputation means nothing. They're just animals if you handle them a certain way, So then my husband was just dead set on getting these. So we just got one little girl and then plan to possibly sometime in the future get a male. And then boom.
6.
Yeah, 7 now.
7, that's right.
Yeah, Jormungandr in the other room.
And do you mind saying some of the prices that you paid for some of these?
No, I don't. I think it's very typical to pay usually that's Zoltus there.
Beautiful.
He's coming out. Usually about $5,000 is the going price. If you find them like on Morph Market or I don't know a lot of the places, but I see that one posted a lot. And she's hungry. They're all hungry too, by the way. So did end up getting some really good deals on a couple of these animals. I only paid that full price for 2 of them.
Okay. So not too bad then.
No. He needs another vine. I made him stretch too far from where he was sleeping. But
take your time. Yeah, set up a new one.
So, well, can you see Isis there?
Yeah,
amazing. That body. She's so beautiful.
Well, that's so fascinating about talking to you is that you can tell how passionate you are about this species, because this is probably something that you do every single day, and you can appreciate their beauty. It seems like every second that you're looking at them, which is really special, really.
I'm just trying to show them that these other vines are up here, because once they're distracted, he'll forget about the other vine. There he goes.
Perfect. Oh yeah, I can see him on the laptop camera and now that camera too. Yeah, that's perfect.
So he's going up, up, up. And they will all come out and go on the vines. I could let every one of them out, and you saw what little effort it took. And the only reason I took so long with Zoltus is because he was trying to get on this vine behind him, and I wanted him to go in front of the camera.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. So, I mean, do you know where that passion comes from? Like I said, when you're talking about them, it's as if you're seeing them for the first time, even though this is a daily experience for you.
My passion for these animals, really, even though my husband chose them, the reason I initially wanted to get snakes was because I had a fantastic experience with ayahuasca. And in that experience, I felt so much love. There was just an amazing thing that happened to me. And I felt like there were just snakes slithering all in my essence. And the snakes were part of my essence. And anyway, I just had a really super fantastic epiphany of love. And I guess I could say these animals represent that night that I had, filled with so much wonder. But that would definitely be my passion toward getting snakes again. But as far as these particular gems, they are just breathtaking. I mean, how many times could you go to the Grand Canyon and be awed every
Mhm.
time, right?
Exactly.
That's how I feel about these guys.
That's amazing. And as far as the ayahuasca experience, when you, because to have a vision of snakes crawling over you would not be everybody's first choice, I imagine. That might be a bit freaky for some people. But when you came out of that, let's say the next day, did you know, like, I need to go and have snakes in my life? Like, what was that? Was that how powerful the draw was, or what was the feeling?
No, that's just the thing about those types of hallucinogenic medicines is that they continue working over time. And everything I'm saying is recorded, information that they continue working over time. And you just remember more and more of your vision, and it's realer than real. And like when I would try to wallow in the feeling of love that I had, and I would envision the snakes, and the draw just grew. So from that, it initiated, but then it was definitely grown and nurtured by me trying to jump back into that fabulous feeling, just irregular,
Hmm.
not
Well,
with any inducement.
right. Well, and there's this manifestation of it all in this room because you have this incredible setup, and that's what we'll talk about next. And we'll talk about this a little bit later too, is your draw to go back to the rainforest and actually do the research and find these animals in the wild, which almost nobody does, but you have such a strong pull and such a strong desire to care for these animals properly. You've gone and put yourself in the jungle several times. So we'll save that for a little bit later because that's going to be a fascinating part of this conversation as well. But why don't we talk about this incredible room? You've already talked about the jungle gym. We have these vines and everything around, and the free range area, but there's also some amazing things. First off, maybe why don't we just talk about the co-habbing aspect of this scenario, because these animals are going to be out together all the time. Is that anything you've ever had an issue with, or is that, that's been okay so far?
Yes. Normally, the only two that are out together, the only male that even comes out at all is Zoltus. And how's he doing? He's just hanging out right there.
Yeah.
Can you guys still see Isis right here?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We can see her.
And he goes back and forth. If he goes into Isis's enclosure and that's where he's sleeping, when the lights come on, I leave him in there. And they'll usually slither on each other. I have a lot of great footage, like the first 2 or 3 nights they're together. And then you'll see Zoltus, they'll sleep like really down low. And once I see him down low, then that night I let him go back home. And he likes to go back home. And I probably let these snakes out usually the week before they're going to get a meal. So they
Okay.
don't come out all the time, but just when they're hungry.
Mm.
And
Which is
right now
sort
they're
of,
hungry.
yeah. So it's sort of simulating that sort of hunting behavior they're going to investigate. And what about for the enclosures themselves? It looks like all of them have live plants. And
Yes.
are you doing anything special for lighting there, or
Yes.
how? Okay.
My lights are very special.
Okay.
I use fluval lights.
Like aquarium fluval?
Yes. And so Isis has 2 5-foot strips in her enclosure. And then the rest of them have the 15-inch light. And these lights are all controlled on my phone. So I can, for example, right now I have them on 10% cool white, warm white, and pure white. Normally, all of those whites are turned completely on 0. And get you something interesting to look at on this view while I'm talking. And only the red and blue lights are on, because when I first got the fluvals, I was excited because the plants just went crazy. They started before they were just alive when I was using just a regular Vitalite.
Mm.
And now they grow so much, I have to keep taking them out and putting them in a bigger enclosure and putting them out here. So the plants love the fluvals. And then on top of that, that's what I was going to say, is that when I had them first put them in there and I had all that white light, it was causing trouble with the snake sheds. They were not shedding properly, and they had always shed beautifully. So I knew it was the lights. And so I just thought, well, the plants only need the red and the blue. They don't need the white. So I just turned the white off, and all my sheds went right back.
So the sheds they were actually just not shedding in one piece type thing?
Right.
And the only thing that you changed was adding the additional light. Huh.
Yep.
That's really
I
interesting.
took out the Vitalites and put all the flugels in.
And I guess you could imagine that if they're in the rainforest underneath a canopy, all of the light that they're going to be exposed to in nature is going to be filtered through all the green leaves, and they're going to be just left with probably just, I guess, blue and red light maybe. And so I'm not sure how that would affect their shedding, but obviously it did if that was one of the only things you changed.
Yeah, I think it dried them out.
That's amazing.
I don't really know exactly, but the only thing I could think of is it dried them out.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, yes, all these plants, a lot of people ask me, what kind of plants do you put in there? Well, I put in plants when I'm at the plant store and I Google it and I see the toxicity, if it has any sap in it, is it toxic to other animals? I do have 2 different kinds of plants in here that are very slightly toxic if they're eaten day after day. Mm. So if one of the animals were to accidentally take, for example, this fake bamboo stuff, it's not real bamboo, but it's the kind you find everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are not safe to eat daily. But if they swallowed a leaf or something, then it's no problem. And it's hard to find things particular to snakes. So I just use what it has for all animals.
Sure.
And toxicity levels in the plant. You can check all that on Google within a second. Also for the plants, they have the misting systems here, the Pro Mist systems. I need to be careful because if my phone gets hot and she sees it, she's gonna try to get a bite of it.
So how often do you mist?
I think 4 to 6 times a day. I'm not sure what he has it set to.
Okay.
And then of course the heat panels up there.
Yeah.
And then that's where the fan comes through. And so all of the enclosures have all of that. Of course, ISIS has 4 misters and 3 heat panels and 2 5-foot flugels, where the rest have 1 heat panel, 2 misters, and the 15 to 24-inch flugel. Cute little cat.
Amazing. The setups are beautiful. They look great. And
then also, just real quick before we move on,
sure.
The vine system that I have in here. You see her start tracking me, tell me, okay?
Okay. I'll be on snake watch.
This vine system that I have in here is made out of, again, some soaker hose you can see here. Also, this is all natural vine that we also got down by the river. And then this entire vine system in here, the whole entire thing, you just take the plants out and then you just take this one little screw right out of here and just lift it up and you can take the entire thing outside.
Okay.
That's awesome. That's how it is with all of these. The babies here, these are just little tree tops that I cut off. Look, he's really hungry. Everybody's really hungry. Little tree tops that I cut off, and this is a removable perch. So I can just take this right out of here. And then I just embellished it with vines you buy at the store. Oh, one more piece of technology is that everybody has one of these, and that's a little alarm system. So if the temperatures or humidity go out of range, then we get an alarm on our phone, which is fantastic.
And what's the brand of that? Do you know? It's okay if you don't. You could send it to me after. I'll put it in the show notes for everybody. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's good. So that's really smart because it actually looks quite complex, all the amount of vines that you have, but it does just completely remove in one unit.
That's Bella. Yes, everything comes directly out. Like I was showing you this. This is the vine. This was our original vine. I told my husband I want a big vine on a stick that looks like cotton candy. And that's exactly what he made me. And these are the store-bought reptile vines. Then we filled them again, 2 sizes with copper wire to make them bendable but sturdy. And then drilled holes and put the copper wire in there and then sealed it with reptile safe aquarium sealant. And then you can see as Moi and then Gishsida have those systems still. This is where I have to be careful.
Waving a hot phone in front of a hungry snake.
So you can see their entire system is in here. And this whole thing just lifts right out.
That's awesome.
This has long. It's actually her litter mate that we got in quarantine over there. And then this is Ningisida. And you can see his entire stick here too. The whole thing just lifts out. So yeah, it looks really complicated, really not. It's all really simple.
Everything just slides out and easy maintenance. No, that's really good.
Yes. I have black tubs. I just put them in front of an enclosure, fill them with plants, pull the stick out. I think I posted a video recently of that. Pull the stick out and just set it on the floor and do what I have to do. Change the puppy pads and clean with peroxide, rinse really, really good and put everything back. So it takes me, really, I can do an entire enclosure in less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's really good, which is hard to do when you have that much complexity in there with live plants and vines and whatnot. So that's great.
I forgot to show you something else.
Oh yeah, go for it.
We couldn't find any water bowls when we started this. Mm-hmm. So my husband got a 3D printer and we started printing these white ones. And then we graduated to green ones. And everybody has those. But then some of the, look at Zolta's. Oh my God. Look at that little tail.
So cool.
Then the bigger animals, here's one here, got these bigger water bowls. And the reason we started with the bigger water bowls is because we couldn't keep Isis out of her water bowl. She was in that little tiny one I just showed you, 3 years old. Like a little deli cup. Like just shoving her whole body in there. So that's why we made the bigger water bowls. And then our design wouldn't work in this glass enclosure. So my husband printed these corner ones.
Okay, cool.
So I don't know if you can see there are 2 in there. And then she's got another one back there.
So just these sort of plastic brackets that are meant to hold basically the deli cup kind of water dish.
Yes.
So they can have arboreal access to water. So why do you think do these animals soak a lot in the wild or why do you think she was trying to wedge herself into that water dish?
I think it just felt good because she was shedding. Okay. And I did notice she was doing it when she was shedding. I felt really bad putting her in this enclosure. I tried to recreate those areas where she could sit in the water bowls and she's never done it again.
Okay.
But in the old enclosure, she did all the time. So it could have had things to do with she loved that perch. It just happened to be in the right spot. But she did love that water bowl. And it generated us to make these bigger water bowls, which I have tons of video and picture of her getting in that big water bowl. She just loved it. So, but like I said, when they like something, we just make more of it.
Yeah. Well, that leads us well into the rain chamber because that's another unique feature of this room. So why don't you just tell us what that rain chamber is and how you utilize it?
Okay. This is our rain chamber, and we did get the rain chamber from Steve Volk, and some people are familiar with this system. I see it posted sometimes in different things, and it has a photo developing system here, and that's what keeps the water on temperature. We have here a hot and cold water spigot we had put in down here, and we just turn it on, and then this regulates the temperature between like 90 and 94 degrees. And so that's what this does. Also, I have this hose right here that I can take. This hose reaches around to all of the enclosures. So what I do with this hose is I turn the water on. It takes a minute for it to get to temperature. And then I spray all of those plants over there. I spray all the plants in the enclosures, and then the water makes it up to the right temperature. And then I go back through and I spray the animals with a very little barely a little squeeze of water.
And it's coming out at the 80 or 90 degrees, so it's nice and warm.
Yes, 90 to 92.
Okay.
This is the inside of the rain chamber. You can see up here it has those spigots.
Yeah.
That's where the rain comes out. And then Steve Volk has these, I think they're resin perches in here. And you can see that he had a few extra that I took out. The reason I took those out is because I found it inspired the animals to try to climb up here.
into the water system.
So now they stay down here. And then I wrapped everything in soaker hose. You're going to ask me at the end what advice I have. It's going to have a lot to do with soaker hose. Soaker hose, my animals love this. It feels like vines. They slither all around it. They rub their face on it. They love soaker hose, and it's such an easy way to create any existing space to be more viney.
Yeah.
So then also the rain chamber has all filtered water. So they don't get any of the chlorine and things because they drink a lot. So
so tell me about how you utilize it. You'll take the animal, you'll put them into the chamber, they'll wrap themselves around the branches, and then you turn the rain system on and you just let it rain on them. How long do you put them in there for?
It depends. I just answered this question this morning. This sits inside the rain chamber.
Just a little water dish.
So what happens is we put the animals in, we sit on these hammocks. My husband will be having 3 snakes crawling around them, slithering all over them. And I'll be taking the ones out, putting them back in, and he'll put another one in. And what we're doing is they're all potty trained. And as soon as we always put them in the rain chamber the day they're going to eat. But like last night, I put them in the rain chamber last night, and they're not going to eat till we finish today.
Okay.
So I usually put them in the rain chamber. We handle them all over the room, let them do stuff. And then we put them all back in and turn the lights off and then come back in like 10 minutes. And they are all smashed against the glass waiting to get their dinner. So they did that last night after the rain chamber. I felt it was really hard to walk away because I knew they expected their dinner.
Right.
And so we put them in there. Then they just drop their tail. You just have to watch them as soon as the tail drops. And if you're sick of waiting, like if it's already been 5 minutes and you want to get through all 6 of the animals, you can just take their tail and put it on the bottom of the enclosure and put this under them, and usually they will go. Even sometimes you have to do that 2 or 3 times, but usually on the first try, but you usually don't have to do that at all because as soon as they get in that rain, they drop their tail, slip this under them, and then take it outside and throw it out and come back and do the next one. We'll rinse it out with the hose, of course. Right?
Yeah.
So it's really nice having a potty trained like that because we don't have, with all this stuff in the enclosures, once in a while something will happen, but I mean, hardly ever.
Interesting. And so obviously, and we'll talk about more about their natural environment in a little bit, but they're getting lots of rain and lots of humidity. So do you think the rain chamber is sort of a vital piece of care for emerald tree boas? Because you don't often see that tool being used. You see lots of misting because you're already misting a couple of times a day. So why the additional soaking of the rain?
The animals in the wild drink the rain. And I've been seeing a lot of posts lately of people showing rain chambers with their emeralds. And the emeralds just drink away. I was going to spray the animals and show you, but really, once I start, they just want to keep drinking. So if I just went through and sprayed everything, which I thought about doing, but I think they would be too expectant. And now I've got these guys out. So this one's hungry. And they just drink right away. And with the misting, some people are misting like 3 days a week. And,
right.
The animals are thriving. Lots of people have great, healthy animals. They have everything going for them. And I just believe that dehydration is a huge thing, especially with the wild-caught animals. And I feel like the wild-caught animals need rain more than the ones who've been raised their entire lives in this environment. Because you might see them drinking out of their bowl, but these animals will drink for 1 hour solid without stopping. I see them do it all the time. If I have plenty of time and I put an animal in the rain chamber, they'll just put their head up and just drink and drink. And if I do it with the hose, I can't even stay there long enough to keep spraying one animal. So they really appreciate the rain. And I've mentored a couple of different people with northerns because of my travels and the things I do. People ask me questions and I answer them, the best with the knowledge that I have. And I always tell them, please just go get some soaker hose and create something in your shower and just let them sit in there. It doesn't have to be some extravagant pipe, build it or nothing. Just get some soaker hose and tie one piece somewhere and one piece somewhere else and put them in there, because they just love the rain. And it is important. If you put them in the shower or spray them with a hose, super, super, super important that the water is warm, not too warm, 90 to 92 degrees Fahrenheit. If, for example, sometimes Cash, he drinks a lot of water and sometimes he looks a little dry, but it's not time for him to go in the rain chamber. So I don't want to stimulate a bowel movement because it's not time for that. His food wouldn't be digested properly, but it would absolutely stimulate it if the water were at temperature. But if I just put the water temperature about 86, 87, 88, he can sit in there and drink for as long as he wants to. And he really enjoys that. So you can do different things in the rain chamber depending on what your purpose is. And as far as how long you leave them in there, like I said, sometimes it's lickety split and other times it'll be more of a leisure thing. I know which ones of these animals really love it, and I'll just put them in there sometimes.
Well, and I think the thing that's a huge benefit of the rain chamber is the fact that it can handle the water flow. You can't have your misting system mist your enclosure for an hour straight because you're going to flood yourself. And it's just then you need something that's much more clean and simple with a drain in the bottom. There's no plants or anything. It's just going to collect the water at the end of the day, and you could even recycle it. Or like you said, the shower as well, because it's going to be impossible for anyone to mimic that inside an enclosure.
You would have to have a true type of situation like my dream, to have a whole room with cinder block floors covered with dirt and all the plants, like a real true jungle where it can rain in there. And I've seen a couple of guys with bioactive and having northern emeralds in there. I don't know I haven't seen anybody with one of these guys in a major bioactive. I know they're out there and I've seen them, but this guy, he's got rain coming down. He's just fantastic. His name is Joe something, but he's somebody that I was initially talking to on Facebook, about the snakes. And I always push the rain chamber. We have no idea where crypto comes from. That's a big word. I don't know the entire word, but it's the regurgitation disease that's real common in wild caught emeralds.
Cryptosporidium, yeah.
And it's too hard to say why it's contagious the way it is. But I just think that if the snakes could avoid the dehydration, they could handle the stress better. There are a lot of theories that the regurgitation is developed from stress. And I think it's definitely a mixture of stress and dehydration, because these animals don't know how to drink out of a bowl. They know how to drink from the rain. Right. So I really believe that the rain is extremely important for the animals' happiness, especially the wild caught animals.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good insight, and they're an interesting species. Just both the emerald tree boa species, because they are so popular, and there is a lot of issues with bringing the wild caught ones in. There's always the regurg issues. You see that all the time. People having to tube feed and whatnot, and then their enclosures quite often get whittled down to just a bare bones enclosure with a single PVC branch, because it's like the only thing that's allowing this animal to stay alive, because they're trying to mist it so often and fog it. And really there's probably a better way. And probably a big part of it is probably just offering lots and lots of water, more than anyone could ever have imagined.
I definitely think so. Like I said, if you offer these animals 1 hour to drink rain, they will drink it.
Amazing.
So that's what I see. And they're not different. All of these animals are identical. They have slightly different personalities on some little things. For example, Isis is pretty aggressive when she wants to be. Zaltis would never be aggressive. So they do have different personalities, but as far as their habits and what they like and what they don't like I said, some of them like the rain more than others, but basically they're all the same, what they do.
So why don't we talk a little bit about your trips down to the rainforest? Because I think that's just such a fascinating part. Again, like I said, you rewind the clock a couple of years ago, you don't even have any of these animals. And not only do you have this incredible setup, you've been to the jungle, I think, is it 3 or 4 times now to go investigate? So tell me about the calling to just go down there. Was it just a need to extract more information?
Well, I went 4 times this year alone. So I spent the first 4 new moons of 2022 in the Amazon. So I've been 4 times this year, and then I went once last year. Last year, when I went, part of my ayahuasca experience, I had a dragon lizard, and the dragon lizard kept going like this to me to come into the jungle. And I was in there and I was trying to find her and I couldn't find her anywhere. And then I looked down and realized I was the dragon lizard. The visions are just cool like that, if you like that kind of stuff. But my daughter actually created, I forgot Isis was right there. My daughter actually created this.
So that's a drawing of the vision, the dragon lizard.
Yes. And I don't know if you can,
it looks like a human, like half human, half frilled lizard, half something.
Well, it's actually me.
Yeah.
So that's why it looks like that. But when I went in and found the dragon lizard, I found that it was me. So I just really, like I said, with the ayahuasca, you develop the memories and you start to have more feelings and insight about what you experienced. And I just really started having a craving for the jungle. Like I wanted to smell the earth. I would just close my eyes and I could feel like I was in the jungle. And I've never been to the jungle. I'm 50 years old. I haven't been camping since I was below 25 years old. I don't even like to go camping or be in nature. Outside.
Was the original ayahuasca experience not in a South American country?
No, I belong to a group in Tucson. It's all it's a church. Basically.
Gotcha.
You have to join the church in order to legally take the sacrament.
Sure. Okay. For some reason, I was just imagining that it was in Peru or something. So you actually did it on North American soil, and then still had this like immense beckoning to the jungle.
Yes.
Incredible.
Immense, like drawing me. Like every part of my body, my taste buds, all my senses were just longing to experience the jungle. So I was really fortunate. I went last summer, 2021, and found the Batisi, which is extremely hard to find. And this is actually the photographs you can see above my enclosures are pictures of the snakes that I found. And I was really fortunate on this trip. We had a professional photographer with us, Jerry, from Catalonia. I don't want to say he's from Spain because he's Catalonian. And anyway, he took this photograph and then my friend had it actually hand painted onto the shirt for me in Peru and then sent it. It was really amazing. So after this trip, I didn't go back again until January. So it was 6 whole months. And that first trip when I went, my poor husband, I told him that I just don't know if I'm coming back. And so that was really devastating. He loves me so much. He, wanted me to have my dream and, let them go and they'll come back if they love you. I guess it's his theory because he loves for me to go. He says the excitement that he hears when I tell the stories is more valuable than anything spent on the trips. And so I did get to go back this January. I was waiting for rainy season to return, and I talked to Igor Zukov, and he's a well-known person in with emeralds, and he really loves geckos. He said that he loves geckos, but he's had his name into emeralds for a really long time now. And he lives in Suriname. And Igor told me the best time to come would be the last week of February. So I waited until the last week of February. Actually, that's not the way it went. I actually went to Peru again. I traveled Peru, Colombia, and Brazil in January, at the end of January. So the new moon of February, from January to February, I was traveling, searching for these snakes. And I had a Peruvian guide who didn't speak English. I don't speak Spanish, but we had the translator on our app, and we did everything. He was fantastic. He's not a professional guide, or at least wasn't, but he definitely is now. Because he's taken me on 2 trips around 3 countries, all up and down the Amazon River. He'll go to a little village where he knows nobody. You know, there's no internet there. You can't just set things up. There's not hotels, and, you know, you're living in the wild. And hook us up, go to little restaurants and find out who's the fisherman that's been here the longest. And he gets us back on the little rivers. Igor told us to look for a certain kind of tree. We call it a chimbillo tree in Peru, but it has a different name everywhere. And I don't know all the names.
This was all in to hunt for the Amazon Basin emerald tree.
That was my sole purpose of these trips.
That is amazing.
Yep. So we searched high and low through 3 countries, never found another Batisi. And I've done that trip twice this year, trying to find another Batisi. And they're just not that easy to find. And then also in the 3 frontiers where we traveled, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru is so well trafficked. There's nothing left there. So when I found this Batisi, Esmeralda, that's what they're called in South America, the Esmeralda. When I found this one, I was in South Central Peru, like a little tiny bit south of the center. And I would really like to go back there sometime. But I just really wanted to find one closer to Brazil, because that's where they have a bigger chance of having a stripe. But then Igor told me that there are only 2 small islands in Brazil where the striped Batisi come from. So I would like to take a trip there one day, but now I've gotten so spoiled in Suriname. I've been to Suriname and Guyana twice now, and it's amazing. You don't even have to search. The emeralds are hanging off the trees like Christmas ornaments, literally, and Amazon tree boas. So I think I would probably just want to keep going back to Suriname.
Yeah. Well, you have some incredible photos on your Instagram holding like handfuls of emerald tree boas and Amazon tree boas too, which, I mean, in the hobby, both those species are considered animals that can be a little bit aggressive and very bitey. They both have quite large teeth. And there you are holding wild caught. It's amazing.
I had a fantasy. Every time I have a fantasy, I get really lucky. I get to do it. But I had this fantasy that I could hold wild emeralds the same way I hold my emeralds. And the way I started out with these guys, which I still do, is they're really easy to get at nighttime. At night, people think they're aggressive and mean at night. But like right now, the way Isis is, I could probably put my hand under her. She's not going to be triggered because my hand is not hot enough. Mm-hmm. But I could put my phone under her and she would definitely bite it. It's possible she could bite my hand, but not her. Maybe a different animal would that's not used to being around people. And I just don't believe they're aggressive. So I had this dream that I wanted to hold multiple wild emeralds, because I had held wild ones without holding the head, but not 2 at a time. And I never got it on a video. But what happens is you just, like you saw me do with Zoltus, he was dead set on going on a different vine. And I wanted him to crawl in front of us. So all I had to do is move his head until his eyes came off what he wanted to see onto what I wanted him to see. And it turned out it's the same thing with the wild emeralds. I set up my phone camera. I opened the bag. I put the hot camera down, and then to where they could see it. You see them look at it. I put it up on the tripod, and those animals didn't care what I did to them. All they cared about was getting to that tripod. So the whole time I have the two emeralds looking like they're posing in the camera, but they're just after what I showed them. And I was able to carry those animals all around camp. One of the elders at the camp, I heard the rumor later that night that I had put smoke on the snakes to tame them.
Oh, they thought you like smoked them to make them like drowsy or something?
But really all I did was just introduce them to something that would make them curious. And they're such curious animals. Another thing about the habitats, just because I'm thinking about it, just really makes me feel sad that they don't have smells and things to explore. They're so curious. They love to, at nighttime, if I offer these vines into their enclosure, the minute they wake up, they go directly to that new thing. Or if I put a new plant or switch one out, they wake up and go right to it. They are super curious.
Yeah, inquisitive. And so you're saying it's sad to see them in a very plain environment, but considering there's literally nothing for them to investigate.
They're very investigative.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But yes, that's how I did it with the wild ones. I have no experience with Amazon tree boas, except in the wild. I've never even seen one in captivity. I only have seen wild ones, but I've probably seen 100, because the Amazon tree boas, I said emeralds and Suriname are like Christmas ornaments. Well, the Amazon tree boas are like that everywhere you go.
Oh, wow.
Even when there are no animals, there are no caiman, no frogs, no nothing. You can still find Amazon tree boas.
That's wow. And did you take any bites from any of these snakes while you were trying to? Oh, you did, yeah.
Yeah. I took some bites from the smaller ones because I didn't care. And I know it was just there was the guy that I went with had a bucket filled with a bunch of little ones, because in nature, when they catch the snakes, they just put them all into one bag. They do separate them sometimes, but I've seen them also put them in bags when I've taken trips with, different people who collect snakes. They'll put multiple snakes in one bag. And in this particular case, there were a bunch of them in the bucket, and I was just trying to get them out and kind of rinse them off a little bit because they smell pretty bad. And I was taking some bites on that. But as far as the bigger animals, they're so predictable. Their body language is so predictable. If they S up, you just, take a stick, and you don't have to hold their head with a fork, but I just like take the stick and rub it under their chin and put their face to see something. As long as they can see there's a tree in front of them, or like I said, my camera and tripod, if I could get them to focus on that, then I can just do what I want with them.
Yeah, that's incredible. And yeah, you don't see people doing that a lot with both emeralds and Amazons. So why don't we talk a little bit about because obviously part of your tour down there was to investigate and learn and come back with some quality information that you could implement in your own care and your own husbandry. So what are some things that you picked up on while you were seeing them in the wild?
The very first thing that I came back and did, two things were give them plenty of vines, because those animals in the wild are climbing. They climb so high up in the trees, you can't even see where they go. I mean, not just the foliage, but they just go so high. And then they travel. Like, you can find the same one. The first time I went to Peru and we found this Patisi, they put a tag inside of her. So now you can't track her, but if you find her again, you can scan her and make sure it's the same animal. And they did find her again quite a ways away. So these animals move. They spend a lot of time slithering. And even though I had already seen that with Azzy when she was just a baby, we used to, when she was upstairs and we noticed how much she liked to climb, we got a big, huge thing of rope from the flea market and put eye hooks in the ceiling and strung it everywhere. And she would slither all over everything. So when I saw in the wild how far they actually slither, it blew me away. And I knew they needed more slither space. The other thing in the wild that I really wanted to implement was air. In the canopy in the jungle, you get a lot of nice breeze, especially, in some areas where there's a river and the breeze is coming through the river. There's just a lot of really nice breeze under the canopy. And so I really wanted my animals to have a lot of fresh air.
Mm. Yeah, I think airflow is definitely something that we can do much better in the hobby. And I think we had talked before about branch diameter. I think that was that something that you noticed as well, just smaller branches, or maybe you could talk a little bit, or maybe it's offering different sizes of diameter.
Yes, they in the wild, we always find them on very thin branches.
Okay.
Only one time did we ever find one on I would say maybe about a 3-inch diameter branch. And she was slithering out hunting. She was not perched or even wrapped around it whatsoever. Her entire length of her body was out. And that was this one, the first one that I found. It was amazing. You talk about how I had no experience with these animals. And I went to the jungle and we found that Batisi. I found her. Everybody was looking at tarantulas because Anamaka, she was there in the jungle to do a study on spiders, and everybody you can lure big tarantulas right out of their little caves. And so they were all doing that. But I had monkeys. It doesn't matter what, sloths. I did like the spiders, but it was just for me, the emerald. And they all said at the camp, you can come here. Don't be disappointed. You're not going to find an emerald. They haven't seen them here, and I said, well, I'm just going to come and experience their habitat and see what kind of trees they climb in and different things. Well, this was only my third night out with the groups walking. And the two groups were together because we had found another pretty big Amazon tree boa. And so the group that wasn't with the person who could get it got the other person. So everybody was together. So there were 7 of us on this trail. And I found that emerald. And when I found her, one of the guides, there were 2 guides, said, oh, it's going to be a vine snake. And I said, no, it's too big and fat to be a vine snake. And we got over there and the main guide, he said, Amy, that's one. That is your snake. And I never posted that video on YouTube or Facebook or anything because I just exploded with F-bombs. It was just like came out of me. And I was so excited. It was the most fabulous moment. I couldn't believe after everybody said, no way, no way. And I found her and she was just all the way stretched out. She was just about a little over 3 feet long. And on that particular trip, I was with a group of researchers. So the animals were taken back to camp, sexed, measured, weighed, chipped if they were something special, which we would get a dozen snakes at night. So we only chipped, I think, 2 the whole time I was there and I was there for 1 month.
Wow.
And so I don't remember what I was saying, but the animals crawl a lot. They go.
Oh, we were talking about the diameter of the branches. I think you were just saying that was the one that you found in thicker branches, but for the most part, they seem to be on very small, spindly things.
Always. And and all of the people that I've spoken to who catch these animals say the same thing. They're always wound around something very small.
Interesting. Well, that's a great tip for people too, just setting up your enclosure wise, offering much, because you see a thicker body snake, you don't often offer these little spindly branches because you think it's going to be too small, it's going to snap, but really they're quite delicate creatures and you don't even know how important that might be for their physiology. They're contracting their muscles tighter to grab the smaller branches and whatnot.
Yes. And they definitely need variety and many branches to slither on. They need many, many branches, many vines.
So 1 dowel is not enough.
No, even 3 dowels, because you could, if you see how I've twisted all of these vines together, I created all of these I tried to make it natural, but see how this loop is like this? Look, you can even see right here. There's a piece of shed.
Yeah.
Get on there. And these animals, they will put their through there, and their whole body, and they just love it. And it can move, it stretches if they need it to stretch, but they don't. They like to do that. I think it feels good.
Squeezing through basically small gaps in these branches. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen them back out of them. All of these little things are strategically put there because the animals, they really they feel secure. They'll like stick their whole tail in there and wrap it all around and then get their body like in all different parts of it. And they just love it. So they might thrive in certain situations, but really if there are pets. I know they're not pets for everybody, but a lot of us consider them pets and we're scared. Like when I first got Asma, she was just a little thing, and I posted pictures of her climbing, and we would just drop the rope into her little aquarium when the lights went out and just watch her go all over the rope that we hung on the ceiling. And I posted a video. Oh my gosh, it was like, I did it in the Emerald Tree Boa forum, and the whole thing, I just deleted the post. I was so embarrassed because everybody said that's way too much stress on the snake. You can't touch those snakes, quit taking pictures of them. So for like a whole entire year, I just did. I quit. I would only post an acceptable image. Even when I got Isis and Zaltis, my big snakes, Isis and I one time, we were just looking out the window together and she was looking and I loved the picture and her tail was going down my back. And I just love that picture so much, but I never posted it because I was too embarrassed of what the experts were going to say. And now I have enough, I haven't had animals for a long time, but I'm a researcher. I have a PhD in analytics. I research. And so I have done a lot of research, PhD level research on these animals. So there's really no information out there that anybody said that I haven't really looked into, but then also expanded that with information about the wild and then visiting myself and then raising thriving animals. So now I post whatever I want to. I had a couple over here today, some of my neighbors, holding Isis, and she's still perfectly happy to come out. She's not stressed. She's just used to it. These animals are accustomed to being interacted with. And I have videos of a little girl letting Zaltis come right up to her face. But, the body language of the animal, he's clearly just curious. Yeah. Straight. And the animals are excellent ambassadors because I don't know how many people have been over here who I would never come to your house. My mother-in-law, for one, Nan, thank you so much, Nan, for what you did. But she came over here and she does not like snakes. She's 80 years old. She's never touched a snake, but they took her heart away because they're so beautiful and they're so sweet. And, she stood here talking to them like they were babies. And I never thought I would see Nan interacting with our snakes like that. And many other people, little 4-year-old little girl has the snakes around her neck and in her face. And the body language of the animals is so easy to read and they're so predictable. The slightest movement towards an S, you just simply, just reach your hand under their chin and get their neck straight. Yeah. So they're not vicious, even in the wild. They're just misunderstood.
And that's the thing is you have, you make a post and then you have all these Facebook geniuses get mad at you for posting it. But you're probably one of the only keepers, maybe even in North America, who keeps Amazon Basin emerald tree boas who has also had experience with them in the wild. There's got to be very few people, considering how difficult they are to find. Who does that? Nobody does that. And you've done it 3 or 4 times now. You've actually been with them 5 times. Been with them in nature, and there's just so much you can extract from that. So yeah, I'm glad that you've kind of just who cares, make your posts, because everybody's being gravitated towards what you are learning and what you're doing with the animals, and clearly what you're doing is good. The animals aren't stressed, they're not striking. You're having people hold a snake for the first time as an emerald tree boa. Like, who gets to hold an emerald tree boa as their first snake? It's just incredible.
It really is.
So you also had a couple conversations that you had posted on Instagram with Igor that you had recorded, and there was two things. One you kind of already had mentioned that, and two things that I want to talk about that I heard from him that I thought were pretty cool. The first was the lateral line, because that's one of the ways that we often identify the difference between a northern emerald tree boa and an Amazon basin. Is the Amazon basin have this stark white line, but really what he said is actually that's not a good indicator. So maybe you could talk about that, what he said there, and then how we can tell the difference between the two species.
I have a really good photo of the wild Batisi that I found and one of the wild Caninus that I found. And it really shows, it's an up close photo of the two heads. And it's very easy to see when you have them side by side, but the scale count and the size of the scales on the snout, the scales are much larger and less on the northern, on the Caninus. And then on the Batisi, they're much smaller, with a similar pattern, but it's extremely distinct. Mm-hmm. So I'll send you those pictures and you can put them up for this conversation. As far as the stripe goes, the Batisi can have a stripe, does not have to have a stripe. For example, when I found this Batisi, I also posted that in the forum and I got a lot of negative comments that that's not a Batisi. It doesn't have a stripe. I actually started putting posts in the forum and turning off my notifications for comments, mm-hmm. because that way my skin isn't as thick as the snake's skin.
Yeah.
But now I don't have to anymore. I don't have any stuff like that coming to me anymore. So that's pretty cool. And then the respectable people always like my posts. So that's really good for that. For other people to see that it's legitimate, what I'm mm-hmm. doing.
And so there are sections, some pockets of Batisi that has the lateral line, but it's definitely not something that's widespread across the entire species.
Right. That's what we were talking about. Like I said, Igor told me that the Batisi in two parts of Brazil are prominent with the white stripes, and that it's very rare, if even documented, to see the Batisi with a stripe far from that area. Mm. So you cannot tell by whether or not they have a stripe. There are other things. The Caninus oftentimes has a shorter, more square snout, where the Batisi has a nice long round snout. But I've seen a wild Caninus with the shape of a Batisi snout. Really, the only true, and the undercolor is said to be brighter in these guys than in the northerns. They have more of a white belly. That could be switched around, but I'm pretty sure these are the more yellow ones. And the only true way to tell is by the scale count on the snout.
Right. Which makes perfect sense. I mean, it's pretty easy to have variabilities in the actual skin color, but scale counts are usually pretty specific. And the other thing that I heard him talk about, which I found really interesting, is the diet that these animals are eating in the wild, because typically in private keeping, we often think that these animals, since they're arboreal, they're eating lots of birds, and especially because they have these long teeth, their teeth are sort of evolved to grab birds out of the air, which obviously does happen. But he said that it seemed like he was saying they mostly eat rodents.
Yes, and also the other team, Igor and both of the teams that I went to Suriname with, all say that the snakes are eating mostly rats. And these guys know, because you'll deal with regurgitations. Igor had mentioned that he witnessed an iguana regurgitation one time, and bird regurgitations, but mostly rat regurgitations. I've experienced one bird regurgitation. That's the only regurgitation I've ever experienced in the wild, because I've been with such great catchers who are very gentle with the animals. I just released a YouTube interview with the two guys that I stayed with last time that we traveled together. And they talk about the same thing, the rats. And that's what you mostly see out there. When you're out there on the river, you're looking for your animals, you see tons of rats scurrying all around the trees. So there are plenty of rats to be had. Another reason it would be more likely that they would eat rats is because if you can still see Isis right now, which I hope you can, because she looks so beautiful. She's the most beautiful animal. And they ambush, so a rat is more likely to come scurrying across their path. But they also, people don't mention it, but they do forage, because look at how they go. When they're hungry, they're out there slithering everywhere. So to find a roosting bird, would seem pretty easy too. But the rats are more likely to come to the animals.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I think obviously a lot of people are feeding rats in captivity too. So that's not a bad thing, but you just hear it a lot that, these animals are probably eating lots of birds in the wild. And it's kind of cool to hear that might not actually be the case. Well, Amy, as you have this experience keeping these animals in this way that you're keeping, which is highly enriched, giving them lots of space, and you've been to the wild habitat, so you know what it's like. What is some advice that you would give people who are keeping these animals? We've mentioned the soaker hose, which is a really good tip, and water. Is there anything else that you wish you saw more of for people keeping, I guess, both northerns and basins?
Yes, both, definitely. I would, if I had to choose one group of people to take what I've learned, it would be the people with the wild northerns, because they're the ones who are not adjusted to all this stuff. They definitely miss their rain. I know they do. And to not have the space to slither around or the variety of things to weave their bodies, they love to, you could see how these animals are right now. They just love to weave in and out of things. And I just wish they could all have more stimulation as far as things to climb on, water to drink that comes from above. Mm-hmm. And more breeze. It is not that hot. Another thing
that's what I was going to ask. Temperature. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the temperature? That was on my list of the wild things as well.
Yes. If you have your animal, say, in a 4-foot tall enclosure, I think that's pretty much the max of what the typical person keeps their emerald, in a 4-foot tall enclosure, even sometimes 2 or 3 feet. But, and of course, even smaller, but I think 4 foot is about the maximum norm. And those animals have a perch all the way up by their heating source, and sometimes lights too. And there may be another perch in the enclosure that's not quite as high. And if there are only 2 perches in there and the animal prefers the diameter of the higher perch, he's going to stay up there because they really like that small diameter. And the back of that animal's just going to be hot all the time. And they come all the way down to the ground practically. These animals hunt. They sleep up high in the trees, and then they come all the way down at nighttime to hunt. And they go far and wide. And when I'm in the jungle at night and I'm sleeping in my hammock, I have my poncho completely wrapped around me, and I have a poncho that goes over my tent. And that's what I use as a blanket because it's cold. And, I know I probably would be really, really cold at nighttime, even at 70 degrees in the jungle, because you were warmer during the day. But these animals, I think that they really need to be 68 to 74 as far as options. I'm not saying that the entire enclosure should be that, but I feel like the animals should have options, and they sleep at different heights depending on how hungry they are. So when they're right after they eat, they all sleep at the top, all of them, for maybe about 3 days. Sometimes only a couple days, the little ones go faster. But then after about 3 days, they'll come down and be sleeping like in the middle and right before a meal, like tonight, last night. Like, these animals are all a week, 10 days overdue from eating. And because sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks, and this was a 4 week plus and some extra days. So they have been all over this enclosure all night long, nonstop, all of them, because they're all so hungry.
Yeah.
And they really love it.
Well, and that is such a good point, is the choice is very important, but you also have to have many choices. I think what you had said about, having a ideally sized branch under the basking spot might force the snake to constantly choose that one section, where you really need to have all the same, very different diameter branches all the way through at these different temperature zones, so they can actually choose based off of the temperature as well. You don't want them just choosing based off what branch, their favorite branch, because they're going to maybe go towards the favorite branch more than the temperature that they need. So yeah, that's a fantastic point. And especially when we do quite often see them with a single branch, then they're stuck with either, temperature maybe slightly to the right or slightly to the left, might be a little bit different, but it's really not going to be that drastic.
Right. And they do like making choices because they make them. Yeah,
absolutely. And you've proven that with this incredible setup you have. And yeah, it's amazing. And that's why I just love chatting with you, because you have such a deep passion, and you continue to let it grow and flourish and keep going down to the jungle to extract more information and bring it back for everybody. And you're documenting everything on your Instagram page. So it's fantastic. Is there anything else we didn't say that this hour and a half, we're already way over time. We've just blown by. So
it went by so fast.
Yeah, it went by incredibly fast. Is there anything else that we didn't say that you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
Not that I could think of right offhand.
Yeah, I think we covered everything. Can you let everybody know where they can find you? Because people are going to want to go check out your page.
Yes, you guys can find me at Happy Basins on Instagram or TikTok, Happy Basins.
Excellent. Do you have a YouTube channel as well, or is it all that video getting posted on
I
Instagram?
have a YouTube channel, but I am a mathematics professor. I took a 1-year sabbatical to go to the jungle last summer, and I don't think I'm going back. But my entire YouTube channel is math instruction. So
okay.
I'm switching that over. I've posted a couple of snake videos, but I am going to be more active with switching it from mathematics to snakes.
Okay.
Most people are not interested in either, but at least with snakes, we do have a bigger group of passionate people.
Yeah. Math and snakes might be a tough sell, so you might have to choose one over the other.
Yeah, just snakes.
Yeah. Well, Amy, it was a pleasure chatting with you. I love what you're doing. I can't wait to continue to see this evolve over time. So thank you so much for being a guest, and we will definitely have you back on in the future, because I know there's going to be more to learn from you at some point.
Very good. Thank you, Dylan.
Okay, that is the end of that episode. Amy, thank you so much for joining us. That was an amazing conversation. It was a pleasure to speak with you. And it's just, as I said through the episode, it's just amazing to find somebody that is just this passionate about a single species. And not only that, this passionate about trying to push the care forward and making sure that you are doing the best job in your own home with these animals, and constantly going to these environments and pulling out new information. It is absolutely remarkable. You are one of a kind. I don't know if there's anybody on the planet that has dived into something so specifically and so rapidly. It's just really, really amazing. So thank you so much for sharing your content and your knowledge with us. And for those who are just listening to the audio version, like I said in the intro, make sure you go check out the YouTube version so you can see some of the snakes that Amy was showing us, as well as her room. And make sure you go check her out on Instagram as well. All information for that will be in the show notes. You can find that at animalsathomenetwork.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it on social media, Instagram or Facebook. You can also rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That really does help our visibility in those two apps. So if you haven't done a rating or a review and you'd like to, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much to CustomReptileHabitats.com for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. As I said a few weeks ago, there is some exciting things happening with that brand in my room. Some point soon, I actually have a bunch of the materials scattered around my reptile room right now. Beyond the camera view, this place is an absolute chaos. So there's going to be some cool projects there. It might take me a little bit of time to put it together, but you will not want to miss it. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube, make sure you do that, because that's where all that content will be. And if you want to join us on Patreon and have early access to some of these builds that are going to be happening, as well as early access to episodes, you can do that at patreon.com/animalsathome for as little as $3 per month. And that wraps up this week's episode. I will see everybody next week.